Welcome to the Writer Reads Short Stories. This is what happens on Axis 58, Part 4 of 5. A ship they would have wanted to defend at all costs if it was boarded, especially since the last colony had been further from help than the current one. I felt a spike of curiosity curl through the implant and pushed Larry's presence away. I had to get across the command center and past one very hungry spider, and hope the first console I hit had something worth fighting with. And I had to hope the kids broke Larry free enough to deal with the rest of the ARIC code polluting his system so that he could turn himself around and get us back on world. And Tina, of course, had an answer for that. On it, don't get eaten while we're busy. Well, that told me. And she was right. I was out of time. Spider-Boy was almost on me. I took a leaf out of Mack's book of spider fighting tricks and launched myself off the doorframe, heading toward the creature's fangs and reaching out to snag one of the monster's forelegs as I hit the floor and slid past. Mack was a good deal heavier than I was, so this trick had worked a whole lot better for him, but it was the best shot I had. I slid on my back beneath the Aric's fangs and pedipalps, dragging its foreleg with me. I made it almost all the way under the spider's abdomen before it ripped its leg from my grasp. It almost managed to drag me back with it, but I let go quickly and wormed my way clear of its abdomen, noting the vulnerable spinnerets as I passed, and wishing I had a way of taking advantage of that weakness. It was a good thing the first console was close by, because that thing could turn its own length in a spinning jump which would have made a ninja proud. Frick me, that wasn't good. I used the empty operator's seat to haul myself out of the way of the first stabbing foreclaw and scanned the underside of the console. Sure enough, there was a sheath. Man, what had this guy thought he was? A pirate? She, Larry interrupted. She was of noble blood. Larry sounded miffed, and I couldn't blame him. I didn't know how close he'd been to the crew before. Not your concern, he said, and I figured the subject was closed. Probably a good thing. I was going to need some room to swing this thing. You know how to use one? Well, duh. It would do for a start. What else is in here? I asked, but Larry went quiet. Nice. Real nice. Now was not the time for sentimentality. Where in all the stars was Mack? As if he had caught that thought, Larry returned. Why? He was in orbit. If he's in range, he'd be teleporting in to help. Stars, if he was that close, he'd probably be teleporting the kids out to get them to safety. The AREC have placed a teleport lock over my shell. Tina! Got it, miss, will deal. And she was gone, which could only mean one thing. I needed to concentrate. Oh, well, that complicated things. The AREC was peering at me from under the other side of the console. I scooted back. Thing was the size of a small pony, but a lot more flexible. Even as I moved, it darted forward, reaching for me with the arm-like pedipalps hanging on either side of its fangs. I jackknifed out of their reach and saw the fangs lash forward, extending like mantid claws but more deadly. Poison glistened at their tips. I ripped the blade from its sheath as I scrambled out from under the console, coming to my feet and stumbling against the command chair behind it. I thought briefly of climbing into it and activating the emergency pod function, but the ship was old, and old tech might just kill me instead of keeping me safe. Besides, I had no way of knowing if the AREC knew how to open the pod, and I didn't want to find out the hard way. I could use the blade to get me to the next console and hope for a blaster to even up the odds. Maybe. Reaching the next console would mean passing under another of the sleeping ARAC. Why they'd chosen human form to rest in, I didn't know. Maybe they'd thought it would buy them more time if the ship was boarded. They'd probably have been right, as long as the folk boarding them hadn't experienced ARAC before. If those imaginary folk hadn't had a clue what they were walking into, yeah, then it would have worked out fine. What had made them think they'd possibly get away with it otherwise? This time, Larry remained silent, either grieving his lost crewmates or busy with something else. I didn't know, but I really hoped it was the latter, because if he was busy, it might mean he was cutting himself free of the ARAC coding, and that gave the kids a fighting chance. I'd intended just to make a dive for the next console, but the sleeping ARAC was too close to be ignored and way too tempting. And any chance to reduce the odds was a good chance, right? I kept a half eye on my main opponent as it extracted its head from under the console, and I took a two-handed grip on the broad-bladed sword I'd pulled from the sheath. I had no idea what culture had nobility that carried these things, but I was grateful that it existed. When I was parallel with the sleeping Arak, I pivoted away from the one pursuing me, putting my entire body and all the momentum of the turn into the hit, and almost separating the head from the body. Even in human form, Arak didn't recover from that. The Arak's human form shuddered into a nightmare of ink-dark legs, leaking dark green ichor, its cephalothorax bearing a deep slash across its center. Its legs twitched and quivered and then crossed themselves over its body and abdomen, and I felt myself breathe again. At least I knew it was really dead. 1 down and 3 to go, right? My relief was short-lived, both because of the bone-chilling screech that erupted behind me, and also because of the glimmers of gold and blue speeding away from the corpse. I snapped a glance at the console I wanted to reach, noting the command chair in my path. Even as I shifted my gaze back to the enraged monster backing up from the console I'd just vacated. He was going to jump? I hoped not, and that reminded me. I shot a glance toward the next Arak along, the one those gold and blue glimmers were only just reaching. I was betting those innocent gleams of light were about to do something I really didn't want them to. I watched them disappear into the webbing beneath the slumbering Arak and then reappear to cover it in a shimmering wave. I felt ice grab my intestines as its eyes snapped open. Just like that, the console would have to wait. The really angry eight-legged pony monster would have to wait too. I took the 4 long strides I needed to get to the body on the wall and swung. If this didn't work, I was so far gone I had no chance of getting back, and nothing mattered anyway. I could not take 3 of them, not once they were up and running. 2, maybe. I put everything I could into the swing, momentum, weight, 2 hands, and all the force I could muster. It was coming off the wall, already morphing from man to spider. I wished I'd had time to do more than target its waist, and then discovered a human midriff was the precise point I needed in order to hit a spider where the abdomen joined the rest of it. Unfortunately, it didn't kill it outright. Fantastic. It twisted in the air, and I pivoted, tracking it as I brought the hilt toward me, shifted one hand to the pommel, and hammered the blade forward into a thrust centered on the hard carapace of its chest. Probably not my best choice. There was an almighty crack, and the carapace shattered, the blade driving deep even as I reversed the thrust and stumbled back. My butt found the rear of the chair, and I turned around it, using it to regain my balance as I took in the rest of the control room. You got Larry free yet? Almost. I bit back the curse that tried to follow and slid under the console, looking for another weapon. I found 2 blasters. Now to pray their charges held, and they weren't just fancy rocks. I hated to think of exactly how long they'd been there. Eichmann liked his toys to function at close quarters, Larry said as I pulled them from their holsters and thumbed them to life. I maintained them, and he shortened the range to avoid collateral. Good to know. I crouched under the console, figuring the Arak would have more trouble trying to dig me out past the seat. Turning my head to find him, I found 2 Arak instead, both hungry and more than a little annoyed, staring back. They'd taken up station in the clear space at the center of the control room, 6 feet out. One made a very clear gesture with a pedipalp. Come out. Seriously? It repeated the gesture, and the other crouched low. Oh, well, I knew this trick. Leaving the sword under the desk, I came out. Both blasters firing. The one offering the invitation lost everything from the top set of eyes down. The other leapt and landed, knocking me backward. I kept a tight grip on both blasters and tucked my elbows tight to my side, keeping the triggers down. Pain ripped through a shoulder as one fang found its mark. A hardened foreclaw drove itself into my side, and a bladed foot went through my thigh. Well, that was going to leave a mark. Larry's voice broke into my head even as the spider's dead weight settled over me, crushing me to the floor. The teleport blocker is down. I will allow your Mack and Tens to remove yourself and the children, and then I will initiate self-destruct. What? My colony is gone. I failed them. That's space trash, Larry. You bought them enough time to do what they needed to do. I was compromised. You still managed to fulfill your duty, but they died. Not all of them died. No, the remainder left. I am pledged to serve the colony on this world, and it has gone. I have no purpose, no way forward. My pledge is broken, my honor lost. What a load of. But the world was getting hard to hold on to, and I knew I didn't have enough time conscious to convince him. I went to unsubtle instead. Larry, there is a colony on Axis 58. You can. I stopped, opened my connection to the colony database, pulled the oldest records into my head. See?